All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Bills Mafia Carolina Takeover. And again, I want to thank everyone who is subscribed on the platforms, the podcast platforms, also have been to our website and have subscribed to the newsletter. Newsletters has been going out, and it's been awesome to interact with everyone. Remember also, too, BillsMafiaCTO@gmail.com. That is the email address if you want to get in on the Bills Mafia fan mail or Mafia Mail. We'll be having those coming up this season. You can also reach out to me with any questions, sponsorships, or anything like that. Feel free to reach out. If you're from an opposing team that the Bills are playing this year, we have the other sideline segment, which is really awesome. And if you'd like to be a part of that and represent your team, reach out to me at BillsMafiaCTO@gmail.com. So what is the what ifs? What if the biggest moments in Bills history were different?
Bills Mafia. Are you ready? From North Carolina to Buffalo, the Mafia is united. This is your home for the passion, the power, and the pride of the Buffalo Bills. Welcome to Bills Mafia Carolina Takeover. Let's go, Bills.
That's right. That's what we're talking about today. What if Wide Right wasn't Wide Right? Or Music City Miracle wasn't Music City Miracle? Or alternative timelines, 13 seconds. What if those didn't happen? Where would the Bills be today? What would Bills Mafia look like today? That was the question I proposed to all of you, and I got some awesome feedback. So what if it was Wide Right? 90s, Kelly, we just did Mount Rushmore. The Mount Rushmore of the Bills before it became Bills Mafia had Wide Right. If Norwood kicks that kick, are the Bills going back to the 4 Super Bowls? That's kind of what I think about, and a lot of Bills fans think about. Like, was destiny decided by Scott Norwood missing right that we would become one of the greatest teams to go to the Super Bowl 4 straight years in a row and never win? Have many Hall of Famers and never win a Super Bowl? If that was Wide Right? The age-old question is, if Scott Norwood, if you had an opportunity to alter the universe and Scott Norwood puts that in the field goal and you win the Super Bowl, but you never go back for the rest of your life, would you take that? Amazing question. And a question I always kind of go back and forth on. Do I want Scott Norwood to kick that field goal and win the Super Bowl? Absolutely. 100%. But to be able to spend the rest of my life and maybe my kid's life to never see the Bills go to the Super Bowl again, geez, that's really hard to feel. I mean, just think about it. Spending 30 years of your life after Scott Norwood kicks that field goal and you have miserable teams? Does Bills Mafia even be created after that? And all the good that comes out of that. That's what we're talking about, and that's what's crazy. And a lot of you said that was a huge piece in their lives, the Wide Right. Certainly was. Was the Wide Right what really created Bills Mafia, but not officially? And what I mean by that was that the first time that Bills fans felt a sense of familyness amongst others because of this devastating thing that had happened where we could have won our first Super Bowl and instead we miss it, and now we have a community, a fan base, a growing fan base that leaned on each other, right? And then you go into the second Super Bowl and the same thing, and the same thing. There were certainly people, and I have come across them living down here in Carolina, there are certain people that I talked to that said that after the 4 Super Bowl, they couldn't deal with it anymore and they stopped being a Bills fan, which is crazy to me. But was the Wide Right an alter changing for the Bills? What about Music City Miracle? And if you go back to the New England Patriots other sideline episode from last year, you'll see an inside story of how that affected my life. With Jesse from Pat's Nation, he tells a story about that. Was incredible for me. Driving on the highway through Springfield, Massachusetts, and the radio cutting out the moment they threw the ball back and they ran down the sideline. And I didn't get to hear any of it until the radio came back on. And all of a sudden, it was a touchdown. A Music City Miracle touchdown. That will forever live with me. That story how that all came about, did that alter the Bills Mafia universe? Did that kind of create a Bills Mafia sense of family? And then obviously the 13 seconds. Probably, now I don't know. Like, is the 13 seconds the biggest moment in Bills history right now? The saying goes, time heals wounds, right? And so the Music City Miracle 90s and the Wide Rider 90s. So now we're in 2026 and time has passed. Has 13 seconds trumped the Wide Right and the Music City Miracle? Is 13 seconds the greatest what if in Bills history? I think so. I do. I think so. I think that was a huge. I don't know if it necessarily trumps, my personal opinion. I don't know if it necessarily trumps those other twos, the other two, the Wide Right and the Music City Miracle. Like, look, if you didn't live through the 90s Bills, but you've gone on YouTube and watched that, the 90s Bills were the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, we went into every season, and there was no social media or anything. We went into every season, and you go through the schedule, there was maybe 1 or 2 losses that the Bills were going to have, and that's because they sat the players. I mean, the Bills were that dominant. And they were that dominant for 4 straight years. And I think with 13 seconds, the Bills are in a position to go back to the Super Bowl, but the competition was much harder than it was back in the 90s. I'm not excusing the 13 seconds one bit. And ultimately, that became the demise of Sean McDermott's defense, obviously in 2026 here. But I do think that the Wide Right is the greatest what if in Bills history. Because if he makes that field goal kick, are the Bills going back to 4 Super Bowls? That is also the question. And the answer is yes, they are. Now, are they winning the 4? We don't know. But are they winning at least one? And if that kick goes through, absolutely. And the Bills were that dominant in the 90s to be able to go back. And that's the problem with 13 seconds, is the Bills are so dominant right now with Josh Allen. The problem is that the talent, meaning the other teams, are just as good. You've got Patrick Mahomes, you've got Lamar. The talent is so much better now in 2026 and in the 9 years of the season that Josh Allen's been quarterback than it was in the 90s. The 90s was separation. The 90s were the Bills and everyone else. If you had to rate the what ifs right now, the number one what if would be the field goal, would be Scott Norwood. Number 2 would be 13 seconds for sure. I mean, we're really only talking about 3 what ifs, right? We're talking about Wide Right, we're talking about Music City Miracle, and 13 seconds in Bills history. Those are really the only 3 that we're talking about. And out of those 3, the biggest what ifs is gotta be that field goal by Scott Norwood. Gotta be. Now, I've also had some people comment about the catch. What if the catch was done last year? And that's a great point. What if that was a catch? Certainly the Bills go on to win. That could be the number one. If the Bills win that, they're probably beating Seattle as well in the Super Bowl and getting the first title. But it didn't happen. And the 13 seconds is the number one what ifs out there based on everyone's comments. And I'm not sure if that's just a generational thing. Certainly, if you didn't live through the 90s Super Bowls, you're probably not feeling that. You probably watch it, you watch it on YouTube, but you don't have that emotional connection. So I get it. Like 13 seconds is this year's generation of Wide Right. But if you go back and look at the history of the organization, the times that we were in the 90s versus the times that Josh Allen is right now, I think you gotta do Scott Norwood's Wide Right as the number one what if. I want to thank everyone again for the comments, and I want to thank everyone for subscribing. Make sure you do that. Send me any emails you have at BillsMafiaCTO@gmail.com. Also, make sure you head to our website, BillsMafiaCTO.riverside.com. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter so you can get hooked up and get all the info as the episodes start rolling out. And as always, be good, do good, God bless, and go Bills.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Bills Mafia Carolina Takeover. Thanks for tuning in and repping the Mafia with us. Don't forget to subscribe, drop your Mafia Mail, and join us next time as we bring the passion, the pride, and the power of the Buffalo Bills straight from the Carolinas. Let's go Buffalo.